she was literally in this gap. And there's a lot of dead knob thorns in that here. And before we could get in there to follow her, we got stuck behind fallen down trees. Elephants have been making off-roading in this area particularly difficult. And that's the last place we spotted her. For about 5.5 seconds. So I have got something else here. I'll pop it on the dashboard for a little bit, see if you guys can figure out what it is. Very fluffy. So we're gonna do a little experiment with this a little bit later. So who can tell me what this is? You can send your answers to questions at wildf.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. What is that, and what do you think I'm going to try to do with it? So far, no trucks, but this is a very busy road. There is a possibility I might have missed a track. Unlikely, but possible. Such magnificent late afternoon light at the moment. Really nice, pretty blue sky. A few fluffy little clouds. Unfortunately, a very corrugated road, which we're going to try and get off as soon as possible. Hi, Lynn from Canada. Lynn saying, I noticed that I said I was quite jealous of James because he got to walk into those lions there, and I said I absolutely love tracking cats on foot. And she'd just like me to explain a little bit more why I love tracking cats on foot. I don't know, when you're tracking an animal like a lion on foot, even a leopard, compared to when you're walking into elephant or buffalo or whatnot, you can't help yourself. You get this heightened sense of excitement, or for me, I think some people might call it fear. I don't really feel the fear. I get really excited, and your ears, everything, you're sort of hyper alert, listening to every little noise in the grass. And when you, when you do get charged by a lion or a leopard on foot, because if you walk them as often as we do, it does happen from time to time. It is probably the most exciting experience you could ever imagine. Sorry, we're just bypassing some little crested francolins that scuttled off. It is literally, probably one of the most exhilarating feelings in the world after you've been charged by a big male lion as he comes right at you. Sorry, Drongo, didn't mean to give you a fright. Well done, Cecilia, Rosie, Rudy, and Janet. And lots of other people got it correct. This is a species of cotton, a wild cotton. It grows quite commonly around here during the summer months and then goes into this during the winter months. And as it dries out even more, the seeds will come loose like this, and then the wind is able to blow the cotton across quite vast distances, and that's how they spread their seeds. But does anyone know what I'm going to try to do with it? So apart from the normal uses that cotton is used for, traditionally it's used for stuffing pillows and Donna has got it spot on. It says, and Dottie and Kathy, Donna and Kathy thinks I want to try start a fire with it. You are very correct. The pyromaniac in me is coming out. I couldn't really show you those sparks. I am looking for bigger cords to do that experiment again. But we're going to now play with cotton. Let's see. I'm going to have to find a suitably safe place for this experiment. Where would the light be best for him if I did sort of that? And if I was on the bonnet?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. I'm going to move away from him in case I set some of our sensitive electronics alight. Let me just find my other tool. Here we go. Lighter, cotton, Leatherman. So the old Boer fur trekkers and hunters that used to come into the wilderness used to take gunpowder with them. So they used to use those old muzzle-loading firearms. And what they would do when they ran out of gunpowder, it is said that wild cotton could be used as a substitute. I don't exactly know how, so we're going to try a few different ways. And I'm not sure whether it's the seed or the actual fluff. So first, if I just, can you see that there, Vim? So we're first just going to light some fluff and see what happens. There are some seeds in it, and it burns very, very quickly. But not quite like gunpowder. Yeah, that's that. Okay, well, next experiment, we'll take out some seeds. I'm going to open up the seeds. Maybe the secret and the really flammable stuff. So there's still a bit of fluff, but I've broken up the seed. Maybe I should do more than one just in case. Let's crush the seeds. There we go. And if this doesn't work, well, then I don't know. Okay, 2 more should do it. Okay, let's see what happens now. Is that good there? Little bit faster. Oh, there we go. Actually, wow, okay, I figured it out. Let's try to turn it around. Okay, can you see the inside of the seed there? Yeah? The little seed, that part there.
A little bit.
Little bit. Try have a look there. We might actually have to do this again in the dark because you can't see it. So the little powder that's come out of the seeds actually burns. So if you imagine a fuse, like sort of the cartoon fuses on the bombs that you light and it's... So that's like cordite and gunpowder. And if you... It might be a bit difficult. I think I'm going to have to do this again when it's dark. But you can actually see it when you crack open the seeds that it burns like a little fuse. But unfortunately I think it's a bit light. So I'm not going to waste any more of the cotton. I'm going to keep that, And we will do this experiment again in the dark. And then I think it'll be a lot more visible. And also I'll prep all the stuff beforehand. So I'll break a whole bunch of seeds. So we'll be ready when we do it. So no tracks of the shadow crossing out of the area. So that means either she's still in this block here to the left of us, or she's crossed back out that way. So we're going to check Impala Road now to see if we've got any tracks there. Lynn said if she ever did that on the bonnet of her dad's car, he would have killed her. Well, in my youth, anything flammable and me has got me into a lot of trouble. I once tried to make a fire on the roof above my mother's horses. That didn't end well for me. I once actually burnt down an old storage barn on the farm. So when it comes to making fires, I've been in lots of trouble in my life. And as I said a couple of nights ago, one of my favorite times of the year on the farm was the controlled burning season, because I was given an apparatus and allowed to make as much fire as possible within an area, and then got to run around with a big rubber mat beating it afterwards, which for any little boy is like a dream. Sorry, I just thought I saw something through there, and that would be a stick. Hi, Dennis from Massachusetts. Welcome on the Sunset Safari, Dennis. And lovely to have you on the back of the vehicle. Dennis would like to know a little bit more about what you do when you're charged by a lion. Do you make a lot of noise or beat your chest like apparently is done with bears in North America? Well, Dennis, you do. And also, your language gets quite bad because you're shouting at them. So quite often, a lot of animals, be it an elephant, be it a lion, be it a leopard, or buffalo, hippo, you can stop their charges by shouting. So you would sort of, if say I'm walking without a rifle, if I got charged by a lion, you make a lot of noise, clap, 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 and I make a lot of noise, but the most important thing is never to run. I just want to check one more little spot because there's no tracks on this road either. And then I have another question about what would I do when charged by a male lion from Debbie in Ohio, or I would be quite happy. It's one of my favorite things. It literally makes you know you are completely alive after you've had 400 pounds of pure muscle, teeth and claws come flying at you at 21 meters per second. There's a couple of interesting things with lion charges in particular. And it's a very simple rule, and one that I've taught many trainees and whatnot in the bush. Noisy lion equals safe lion. So if a lion's charging you going and hitting the ground and making noise and snarling and spitting, you're okay. He's just telling you to go away. If it's quiet lion, it's a serious lion. And I've only actually had one really, really serious lion charge in all my years in the bush. And that was from 2 male lions, and they were quiet lions. And those lions happen to be in an area where they're quite famous for eating people. So they don't have some of that natural fear of man that other lions do. So we were tracking them on foot, a big pride of lions, over 30 lions. And it wasn't that far from here as the crow flies. And myself and my tracker at the time, Glass Maramani, we came through a very similar area to like we were over there with those lots of quarries and a sodic site. And we tracked these lions almost every day while we worked in this reserve. And these males had come from up north, a bit further away. They weren't as habituated as the other lions. And we walked through a drainage line, and let me first explain. I left my guests sitting about on a high road, and then it went down into a little drainage line and then up onto a big open sodic soil site on the other side, but in between there was quite a lot of thick bush and quarries. So we were only about 100 meters from the guests, and there were 6 of them sitting on the vehicle, and Glass and I went off, big heroes, we've got a gun, we're going to go find these lions. And we crossed through the drainage line, we popped up, and these lions were miles away for walking lions on foot. They were 80 meters, and normally a lion at 80 meters will run away from you. These 2 big males got up and came straight at us without making a sound. And now this is business. Glass starts shouting at Changan, shoot, 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 shoot. And I didn't want to shoot a lion in a national park. So I load the rifle and I drop them in the air and I say, no, throw rocks at them. So Glass and I ended up shouting. Our language probably wasn't the best language, and nothing my mother would be proud of, as these lions careered towards us. And they eventually stopped at about 3.5-4 meters from us. So to give you an idea, they probably stopped, a bit closer, probably 3 meters. So from here to that tree, a little bit closer than that, from me to that tree there, a little bit closer than that. And I'm shouting, Glass is shouting, Glass is throwing rocks at them, and eventually when they stop, and if we'd run, I'm convinced they would have got us. So when they stopped, then they started growling, and you've got the tail and it's swinging from side to side. And obviously our heart rates were going at a rate of knots. So we then, if you work with a very good tracker and a system like that, while you've got up with the rifle like this, he'll go behind you and he'll slip his finger through your belt. And he will lead you backwards. And that's just to make sure you don't trip over things while you're trying to go backwards out of the position. But it took us about 20 minutes, half an hour, because every time we went one step, they would come forward a step. And it carried on and on like this till we managed to drop down into the drainage line. And walked back to the car. We were completely fine. Absolutely fine, till I unloaded the rifle. I opened the bolt, took the bullet out, put it back, closed the bolt, made rifle safe, put it in my gun rack, and I was still standing outside the car. And I'll never forget, I was standing there, and now all the guests are obviously asking lots of questions, but Glass and I we're not answering. So, literally, standing next to the car like this, and as I put the rifle down, my hands just started going, and I remember trying to get into the Land Rover, and I just kept missing the door, and Glass was doing the same thing on the other side. But that was definitely the scariest lion charge that I have ever faced. And I'm very happy I faced it with a man like Glass. An incredible tracker and an incredible person. So, no tracks of Madame Scardovier, or Shadow, which is a Scardovier is what Scott has nicknamed Shadow, which is the Afrikaans for shadow. Ellen from Arkansas, welcome on the Sunset Safari. Thanks very much for joining us, Ellen. Ellen's given us a bit of information. She says maybe it's the oil in the cottonseed that causes that. I'm not 100% sure, but I will definitely go find out. Maybe you guys can look it up for me. Find out what is that combustive thing that is in the wild cotton and was used to make gunpowder in the old days. So maybe you guys can have a look and send the answers through to me on questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive if you're on Twitter. Hi, Sarah. Sarah would like to know whether leopards have favorite trees. In my experience, Sarah, they do. I've definitely seen they have a preference for certain trees, whether to hang a kill in or to rest in. I've seen one particular female leopard, every time she had cubs, when the cubs got to about 4 or 5 months old, she would take them to a set of 3 big jackalberries, or African ebonies, on the edge of the Sand River, further south from here, and she would use that as their base for those cubs while they were sort of in that development age. And then another female leopard used to love leaving her cub, and we often used to find her in a giant Natal mahogany tree. But yes, I personally do think they have favorite trees, and maybe not because, or definitely because the trees are big, they offer safety, especially if they have cubs for them. And I'm just going to turn around, so there's no tracks of Shadow, which means she must still be inside this block. And this is part of that dark zone that Steph and I and Scott joked about, that whenever an animal goes in here, we just can't seem to find it again. But don't worry, I haven't given up yet. What we might do is I'm going to go a little bit further, and I'm just going to stop and listen for a little bit. Hi, Penny Pine. Welcome, Penny. Penny would like to know how many languages I speak. Penny, well, very well, probably only 3. My Shangaan is horrific. Unlike James's, which is very good. My Zulu is a little bit better, but unfortunately I've lost a bit of those languages from moving around in Africa so much. So I would say obviously English and Afrikaans, and then my Swahili is probably my most fluent, but I'm probably very rusty. I mean, I haven't been in East Africa for a while, but then I can speak a little bit of a lot of other ones. So a little bit of Xhosa, a little bit of Tswana, a little bit of South Sotho, and a little bit of Lozi from Zambia, a little bit of Bemba from Zambia, but not particularly well. I can sort of get by. I can ask for a meal, a beer, and a bed, and where the fuel station is. Hi, Pamela. Pamela is saying, as we head into our winter solstice night, what is my spookiest nighttime adventure? Wow, Pamela. That's a really good question. I'm actually going to have to think about that for a minute or two. Let's think. Actually, I don't. It happened to me when I was actually very young. Well, not very young, I was in my teens. I was at a boarding school, and that boarding school happened to have a large nature reserve which it owned, around 4,000 acres, and we were allowed to go camping on it. And I must have been 15 or 16 years old, and I was with 2 of my friends who were a bit older, and very much bush boys as well. And we had told the teacher that we had found leopard tracks, and we were convinced there were a couple of leopard on the reserve. and he told us we were talking nonsense. So to prove him wrong, we actually took an old backpack, put a car battery in it, and attached a spotlight to it, and we walked that whole reserve till we found a leopard, and we did, and that wasn't the spooky part. I definitely believe there's some things in the world that science can't explain. Most things it can, and we happened to come across a very strange set of things in the bush. There were these incredible patterns in fishing line that were up in these trees, but in a tree that no human could actually sort of climb. They were about 6 meters off the ground, and on the one side was stabbed, a dove's wing was stabbed into the ground, and on the other side a goat's heart was stabbed into the ground with nails. And then we flashed the spotlight and we saw the Zulu man in his full traditional sangoma dress, and he let off a blood-curdling yell and ran. And us three little boys did the exact same thing in the opposite direction, and we were so scared that night. I think it's one of the only nights in the bush, and there weren't lions and hyenas and that, so we used to sleep. We didn't used to take a tent, we just sleep on the ground next to the fire. We had one machete with us, and we all took turns trying to stay awake and hold the machete. We were convinced we had been bewitched and someone was going to come get us during the night. That was definitely my spookiest. I actually still get goosebumps when I talk about it. There's definitely some things in Africa that you can't explain. Well, Sherry from Ohio, thanks very much. Sherry sent me a bit of information. She says that cotton is cellulose, and that very similar structure to wood, which makes it combustible. Thanks very, very much for that, Sherry. I'm just wondering if in the cotton seeds there isn't something else that's more flammable than cellulose. But maybe you're right. I just seem to think that there has to be. The fact that it was used as gunpowder, it has to be more combustible. So there just has to be a spark that causes that to burn. So, very interesting. We're definitely going to have to try and find out more about this. It is an absolutely beautiful winter's evening here in the Lowveld, and it's amazing how much energy just looking at this unbelievably beautiful scene I get from just being out in the bush every day. Hi, Leslie from California. Leslie would like to know whether there are any crocodiles in the area. She said she's never seen one in Wild Earth. Well, Leslie, how long ago was it for him? About 2 months? Since the crocodile left Buffalo's Dam, yeah, about 2 months. We had quite a large crocodile at Buffalo's Dam. It was there for a week or two, then it left, and then it or another came back. There are crocodiles in the area. We don't have particularly big water holes in our traverse. I'm still convinced there's a crocodile somewhere in Arethusa Dam. We just haven't seen it yet. It is a big enough body of water. And further south to us, there are a lot of crocodiles in the Sand River. And as my dad taught me, or drummed into me as a kid, the only way not to be bitten by a crocodile in Africa is to treat every body of water like it's got a crocodile. And I've seen crocodiles in tiny little mud pans 25 kilometers away from the closest permanent water at the end of the dry season. So there's a possibility a crocodile could arrive at any of these water holes at any time. I've found them walking through Mopani woodland in northern Botswana, miles from the rivers, miles from water. At the beginning of the dry season, as the pans have dried up, they've been walking through to get to the main river. So yes, there most definitely are crocodiles in our area. So guys, unfortunately, VM and I have to love and leave you for a little bit. But don't worry, we'll be back very shortly on the with the fireside chat. We're going to go set up. I'm going to go build a fire, and we will be back with you a little bit later. And enjoy the lions with Jemsy. So have a wonderful time, and we'll be back a little later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to this astonishingly active pride of lions who are engaged in all sorts of acrobatics just behind me, as you can see. I'm afraid, since you last left us and went off to join Brent, who I believe told you some of his adventures, probably in Tanzania. They were quite astonishing, those adventures. These lions have done absolutely nothing at all. So I'm hoping they're going to move a little bit in the meantime, but just before we go off to the fireside chat. We've got about half an hour. So I think for the next probably 15 minutes, we'll probably sit with them like this, and let's see what they do. A lovely question from John in California. John, you want to know what would happen if a lion is maneless, and what effect does that have on his character? Does it make them more aggressive? Does it make them more nasty? It certainly makes them more easily threatened, John, and therefore that makes them slightly more dangerous. So apparently those two the lions of Tsavo that devoured a number of railway workers in, I forget exactly when it was. It's one of Brent's favorite stories. Apparently they were maneless lions, okay, and they couldn't take a pride. They weren't attractive to the girls, so they were probably very frustrated. And that's a sort of a genetic anomaly that makes a real difference in a lion's life. And yeah, I would imagine it would make them more easily threatened and therefore possibly more dangerous. Nice question, thanks, John. I've never actually seen a maneless male. I have seen a slightly maned female before, which is quite unusual, and that's normally to do with increased sort of testosterone levels. While we're sitting here, you might like to think about the reasons for why lions are in prides. They're the only truly social cats, and again, while we were on our sort of Sunday afternoon off before we came in this afternoon, I was doing some reading on them, and there's a lot of conflicting evidence as to why lions are in prides. And I think it might be quite a nice idea to put that out to you and ask you to try and tell me why you think they're in prides. Again, don't go to Google, largely because you'll find a lot of nonsense, but also because it's try and use your intuition. It's quite a nice exercise to think about biology and why sort of biological systems work the way they do. And think about mainly how it might be able to increase their survival chances. And while you're doing that, I believe Brent told you a story about a lion charge that he had to stand down. I have never had to stand down a very nasty lion charge. A couple of leopards have had a go at me. But not to the point of actually hitting me. And the thing with the leopard charge is that it tends to happen a lot more unexpectedly and a lot faster than a lion charge, and it almost sort of happens and is over before you realize it has. Most of the lions that I've found on foot have tended to stand up and look. They might take a step forward, but if you start moving backwards, they normally back off. The very first lion that I found on foot on my own, it's quite a nice story. I was walking along the Timbavati riverbed, which is a magnificent, dry, typical low-felt riverbed where there are huge jackalberries and fig trees all the way along, and mahoganies, and large-leaved albizzias lining the bank. So it's hugely forested and shady, and then the sand is this perfect white. It's the most glorious river, and it's just north of here. And my tracker, Elvis, and I were trying to track lions. I had some guests on a vehicle just above the riverbed, and we'd gone into the riverbed, and he said, well, why don't you go and check around the bend there, and I'll check over here. So that's what I went off and did. And as I went around the corner, I was sort of on my own, and I was looking at the ground for tracks, and I looked up, and there was a lioness watching me, and she'd probably been watching me for 5 minutes. And she would just put her head down like that. Can you see my head, Andrew? And just in a sort of not quite stalking behavior, but just a kind of, ooh, he's seen me. She only did that as she realized I'd seen her. Our eyes locked, and I walked back slowly as I'd been taught, my heart going in my chest. And I became so excited by this that I started yelling for Elvis, because I wanted to tell him and make him proud that I had managed to find this lion without his help. And I think I must have yelled so loudly that the lion disappeared off and was never to be seen again. And our guests, unfortunately, that morning went without seeing lions. And Elvis took me aside afterwards and explained to me in a very patient manner that when I find lions, I wasn't to shout and scream with excitement, but rather walk silently back to the vehicle so that our guests might see them and not just me. Hello, Andrew in Ohio. Lovely question. Would I be more or less afraid of coming across a single tiger, which has a sort of solitary way of living, a bit like a leopard does, or a jaguar, or would I be more afraid of coming across a pride of lions? You know, I've got quite used to walking out here, so I don't generally get too nervous. Unless, I mean, to stand down a male lion charge is not something that is particularly fun to do. Sorry, that's Angie in Ohio. My radio is giving me a little bit of trouble this afternoon. A tiger, yes, I think does present something of a different prospect. I know that they do tend to eat more people than lions do. I think that's probably got quite a lot to do with the number of people that they live around, though. You know, I mean, India, where most of the tiger fatalities take place, or human fatalities as a result of tigers take place, it has 1 billion people living in it. So I think that the chances and incidence of human-wildlife conflict are probably a lot higher than they are in this area. And the other thing is that, you know, those tigers haven't evolved with people, and so that it's a slightly different kind of evolutionary process. So, yeah, I would be nervous to see a tiger on foot, but I have to tell you, it's something I'd really love to do. Hello, Patricia in San Diego. A really nice question. Thank you. You say you don't really understand how it can be that lions can get away with drinking so little water. They must have very efficient kidneys to process the horrific sort of diet that they have. Patricia, there are two answers to that. They do have particularly efficient kidneys. You know, the kidneys have been designed to cope with the diet that they have. Remember that all the animals out here live in a semi-arid environment. This is pretty dry, and you don't find lions really these days in areas that are particularly wet, and in fact you find them in much drier areas than this. You find them up into the Namib, and the Namib Desert. They will probably get 150 millimeters of rain a year, which is 6 inches of rain every year. So what they do have is an incredibly efficient way of absorbing water from the prey that they eat. Remember that most organisms are probably 70% water, and so, you know, if you eat an organism and you eat all of the organs and the wet bits inside, there's quite a lot of water in that, and they get a huge amount of water. Certainly things like cheetah and leopards in desert areas will derive just about all the water they need from their prey. They will drink if they can, but they don't have to. So there's other soporific atmosphere that drives these lions to such incredible feats of slumber, the likes of which human beings can only dream. So the sun's just gone down, and we're going to listen for a few seconds.